This guest entering the lounge is a pioneer in inspiration, also just a superstar coach in baseball, highly qualified. I was going through the resume. It took me a while. It's ridiculous. It's incredible, but highly qualified to lead a squad, teach players about the game. She became the first female to hold a full-time hitting coach role when she got the job with the Yankees to start spring training. That was in 2020. What a fun year that was, 2020. I met her on a TV interview during the 2021 Futures game. She was on the coaching staff. There's a good story there too we'll get to. And just keeps making history. Manager of the A-ball Tampa Tarpons, an affiliate of the New York Yankees, and that makes her the first female to manage an affiliated baseball. So we want to talk through everything with her. Otherwise, I could spend, as Alana knows, probably 10 more minutes on the impressive educational degrees, deep background in baseball from the U.S. to the Dominican Republic, even the Dutch national team. Rachel Balkovec is in the lounge. Rachel, how'd I do? I tried to get that all in there, but I'm like, I actually want to spend, 28 minutes talking to Rachel and not just going over all of the different experiences you've had in the game.
I really actually appreciate you kind of mentioning those things, because it seemed like definitely in 2019 when I was hired by the Yankees, it was kind of like, here's Rachel Balkovec. She came out of nowhere. And I actually think some backlash was happening because of that. It was kind of like, oh, where did this come from? And there's definitely, like you said, a really deep background in baseball from dating 10 to 15 years ago now. So I appreciate you mentioning those things.
Rachel, it's oftentimes easier to say that you admire somebody that's older than you, someone that has some years on you. You're younger than me, and I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for you, and you are an inspiration in your own right. But I do want to ask you this, just from woman to woman, no disrespect, Scott, I love you, but are you tired of answering the same questions? Are you tired of saying, the first of this, the first of that? I asked you from my own experience with that, but I think Scott actually brought up a really good point when we were off air, just talking about we're never going to progress unless we just normalize this and just move forward.
Yeah, but we're not there yet, so I am, to be frank with you, I am tired of answering questions, but it doesn't matter. It's my job. And so I don't think, even when I first got into professional baseball in 2012, I just understood that it's another part of my job, and I can't say that I'm tired. I don't want to do interviews, or now I don't want to sign autographs, or I don't want to take the time to speak to a young woman or a little girl or a little boy, whatever. That would be really selfish of me, and also it would be disrespectful to women who've come before me in different roles to say, oh, I don't want to do that, or I don't have time for that, which sometimes I don't have time, but as much as I can make time for, or much as I can do, it's a part of the job that I signed up for. And I really believe that. So as much as I'm tired of talking about it, I'll talk about it until we don't need to anymore.
How much do you enjoy? Because I know also you didn't get into, or correct me if I'm wrong, get into the game, of course, because of that. You're into the game for the reasons of loving the game and having a deep background in the game and knowing this game and having strength and conditioning backgrounds and educational backgrounds, which we can dive into some of those specifically. But do you enjoy the time when you just kind of can get lost into an interview or a question or a sit down with someone just talking about the game? Because it still is a heavy burden on your shoulders to always, have that side of things where you are a pioneer in the industry.
I mean, I do that every day at work. So it's not, we don't talk about me being a pioneer every day at work. So it's like, we talk about baseball. We talk about how we can better develop players. And it rarely comes up, that I'm a woman, unless it's like something funny, at this point, it's just, I get shit all the time at work, about something being a woman, but it's obviously all in good fun and never offensive. And I have a lot of respect with the Yankees. So it's not a bad thing. It's just like the topic of me becoming the first of something is not ever brought up at work. So I get plenty of baseball talk and talking shop at work and just doing my job. So there's never a lack of that.
I think so much of being a manager, and you certainly would know more than I, having never done it myself, is being able to communicate with your players and manage different personalities. There's not one mold for every guy on your team. And I admire the fact that you taught yourself Spanish, because this is such an international game. And especially at the, the minor league level and affiliated baseball, coming up to try to get to the big leagues, you really got to get to know players, because character is so important. Why did you take that on?
To learn Spanish, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or to be a manager?
To
Uh,
learn Spanish.
Yeah, I like to always correct people when they say you taught yourself Spanish, because I always give the credit to the players. You know, the players taught me Spanish. I definitely knew nothing when I got into professional baseball. And I would say, just as you mentioned, though, like something different that I definitely have done in my career is just dive into, I'm going to be fluent in Spanish. You know, I don't want to just get by with the whole, oh, ¿cómo estás, papi? Like, you know, the Spanish that some people say, oh, well, you know, I know enough to get me by. And I just never thought that was good enough, because obviously you can get by, or you can truly communicate and get to know somebody. And that's totally different. Those things are very different. And the players see that. The players see that you're invested in them. And especially early on, when there were no women around, you know, it was a phenomenal way for me to connect with the players and for them to immediately know that I was serious about my job and just really helping them. And so immediately when I got into baseball, I just knew that that was something that I was going to be good at, and that I wasn't going to just settle for the bare minimum. And obviously it's also opened up opportunities for me for other roles, and to travel to the Dominican Republic to be a Latin American strength and conditioning coordinator. It's just opened up opportunities for me in many ways, specific, like most importantly, to develop relationships with the players that are kind of hard to reach sometimes. And, you know, for me to be able to get to a point where I hate to say it like this, but when you need to have a tough conversation with a player and be real with them about something that they're not doing right, it doesn't sit as well if you have to have a translator there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fact that I can just straight up have a difficult conversation, that's actually one of the most important times. You know, to give them a high five or a good job, that's easy. But when you have to have a tough conversation with something that needs to be adjusted, to be able to communicate in both languages is wildly important.
Public service announcement for anyone that wants to get in the game. And I always say this when someone comes up to me, they're like, what should I do? Especially when they're on the younger side and like, you're not thinking about college yet as a kid. And let's say you're just playing little league, whatever. I'm like, learn Spanish, pay attention in school to that. That's my one regret of anything, that if I paid attention just a little bit more in school in one topic, like actually throw away most of the other ones, no offense, but like geometry is not really doing much for me these days. I wish I just spent like all of my time and energy there. So what age were you at that point that you actually picked that up? Because it's not easy to pick up a second language and be fluent at an age past. I mean, I don't know. I think it's easier when you're a kid, of course, to learn a language. So like, what age did you pick it up, and how did you learn? And I know you said the players, but also like, did you have one of those programs like the Rosetta Stones with you? No.
I was 24 when I first got into the game. I'm 35 now, to give you an idea. And I would say I was competent in the weight room coaching by the end of one season. And that was just literally asking, writing it down. Smartphones were like just starting to be a thing when I got into baseball. So there was no Duolingo, there wasn't an app for that. So
Google Translate.
Yeah, Google Translate. Definitely. I would like show up prepared with whatever I wanted to talk about for that day. I would Google it and then write it down and sound like an idiot, you know, and that was part of it. But then you sound like an idiot and they're laughing and they're coaching you. And it creates this level of connection where, you know, they're not the only ones that are learning. So when as anyone knows, this is universal, as anyone knows, when you're in some kind of coaching, teaching relationship where you're able to help each other, it bonds you, you know, where you're vulnerable with them and you're not the only person who's coaching and telling them to do something that's difficult for them. You're also doing something that's difficult for you, and they get to see you fail and sound like an idiot and be vulnerable, and they get to coach you. And so it was a phenomenal way, again, to build relationships. And it really just like was me being willing to sound like an idiot often, and get corrected by the players, ask questions, Google, etc. And again, like it took me one summer to get the coaching in the weight room down, and then it's just been a slow build from there for 10 years. And I still wouldn't say that I'm fluent, but I can give a speech and say dang near anything that I need to a team, you know.
What is the most challenging part of what you do as a manager?
What's not challenging is the question. You know, for me, it's definitely, oh God, again, it's like so many things popped into my mind right there. I think that the misnomer, like this year, the feeling of which is like, I get hired as a manager and everyone's like, yay, you're manager. And they're like, can't we just see you in the big leagues? And I'm like, I'm so fucking far from that. So you might have to edit this podcast, but it's like, I have so much to learn. and just things you think you know the game, and it's like, I don't know shit. Like there's so
Yep.
many rules, so many nuances, so many things that I have to pick up. And I would like to tell you that's this fairy tale, like everything's great and everything's fine, but realistically, I'm just like drinking from a fire hose every single day, which has gotten better as the season's gone on. But just learning a ton about game management and understanding what needs to happen and when, and thinking 3 innings ahead, and 9 outs ahead, and understanding what you need to know before it happens, and considering 10 different situations. So it's just been it's all been difficult. I think that the thing has not been as difficult as the coaching aspect, because realistically I've been coaching for 10 plus years. So those things are all transferable, from strength and conditioning to hitting to now as a manager, and I'm over base stealing and outfield, and the coaching aspect is transferable. Pretty much everything else is not. So lots of learning this year, which I expected, and so did the Yankees. So
You brought up such a good point in game management, and I'm not trying to compare what I'm about to say to what you're doing right now, but Scott and I were doing this simulated game in which he would present scenarios, and I had to decide. I picked 2 teams. I used to cover the Colorado Rockies, and I most recently covered the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I had those teams going up against one another. I want to say it was the 2020 Dodger team, and then the 2007 Colorado Rockies team that went to the World Series, but then ended up getting swept by the Red Sox. And we had to come up with these game situations. And I was like, you think you know what you're going to do, and in that split second, you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I don't have an idea what I'm going to do in the next inning, let alone 3 innings from now. And looking at the order, where you are in the order and who's still left in your pen. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I had so much more of an appreciation for managers in that situation than I ever thought I would have. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I guess it's just a matter of you do it to learn how to do it, right?
yeah. And I've had a lot of support, thankfully. And also in the minor league system, it's a lot more like pitching management. It's a lot more about pitch count than it is about who you need to get at. So it's definitely a little bit easier. Well, it's a lot easier at the minor league level and the major league level, in my opinion. And I've had a ton of support. But like I said, just still a lot of learning, which is exactly what I thought was going to happen. A lot of learning.
And that's out of the park baseball. That's good. So it's a manager simulation game, which it's awesome. It's so fun to play, even with like former players too, where they'll go, damn, I didn't know how tough it was for my skipper. Like it's stressful. There's so much more chess going on, I think, than people realize. You're not just chilling and writing a lineup card. So has your brain evolved and changed? Like I'll use another Alana and I example in the TV world, where like I can't watch most television the same anymore since I've been, a pro in the business, or an adult in my real world life now in television, if you want to call it real world. But I'll watch a show and it's like, oh, I know that they don't know where they're going yet, and they're waiting for the producer to tell them, or there was some type of graphic mistake, or they have to get to break and they're trying to end the interview, whatever it is. Do you watch, say, if you're kicking back watching a Yankee game, are you like thinking ahead now and going, okay, this is what I would do in that scenario?
Yeah, it just gives you a different lens. Like it just gives you a much broader lens. And also just from the personnel standpoint of like players moving up and down, and trades, and not, just like you have a more bird's eye view, and you understand, okay, it's really not about who's having the best season. I mean, at the major league level it is, but from the minor league perspective of developing prospects and letting prospects play, even though they might be having a really tough season, it's like they need to get at bats, and they might get better by playing, even if they're not, the best player out there right now. And so again, managing personalities and kind of understanding the whole system and where everybody fits in is really a different perspective that I didn't have before.
Who do you turn to? So do you have mentors manager wise? Are there any names that either it could be some that you actually communicate with, or just some that you like enjoy watching and seeing how they go about doing their job, whether it's in-game management, developing players, media, which is a huge part of the job, especially as you rise through the ranks. The amount of managers I talk to that are like, damn, like big league managers where it's their first time at the job, and they're like, I didn't realize how often I have to speak to the public and watch my words, and twice a day. And depending on the market you're in, you're getting pummeled every day with questions, and there's a whole psychology game to how they want to answer about a certain player, if he's struggling or not. So do you have people that you look towards or talk to?
There's definitely like a few major league managers that reached out, several, more than several major league managers that reached out when I was hired, including obviously Boone. I won't mention other names, but just, yeah, there's some people who more so from like a human being side of things, of just like, how do you manage things, and less of the in-game thing. Thankfully, I've had a ton of media experience from the time that I was like 25 when I first got in baseball and started doing just podcasts and small interviews and understanding, again, how to watch your words and what you say can always come back, especially these days with Twitter. So having a bit of experience there has been really helpful, obviously, but definitely even outside of professional baseball, people, in the college ranks, college coaches that I respect, even outside of baseball. And I'll just mention like Anson Dorrance, who's one of the most successful head coaches of all time across every single sport in history, that gets probably overlooked a little bit, the head coach of UNC women's soccer. Just drawing from him on his leadership skills. And I mean, it's not one realm. It's really just, again, these things are universal. Like being a head coach in any situation is pretty universal across all sports. And so there's people in every corner of the earth that you can think of, and definitely a lot in baseball, but also outside of baseball, just leadership.
I have a two-part question, if you don't mind, Rachel. First is, you're probably the only woman in your organization, and probably the only one that travels, would be my guess. Where do you find balance when you're on the road? Again, speaking from experience, I used to travel with a big league club everywhere they went, and it's not like you can just pull up a chair at the bar and have a conversation with a male coach. Perhaps obviously it's different for you as the manager because you have a staff, but where do you go to, where do you turn to when you have to have some sort of life work balance, particularly on the road?
I mean, I feel comfortable going anywhere with a male coach out now. I think that was like definitely on my mind a lot more when I was younger and first getting in the game. Where it was like, oh, what's someone could think. And I definitely had several situations where I have a friend, another coach that I got close with, and there's rumors circulating that we're dating. And, it's like, now, I don't know, this is my 11th year in the game and I just don't give a fuck anymore. Like, I don't know. I have a reputation of professionalism, and if you don't know that, then you don't know that. But I think my reputation is strong enough now, after over a decade being, on the coaching side of things, on field side of things, that I don't think anyone's really worried about that. And if you are, then you just don't know me,
Yeah.
So that's that, on the road. If I want to go have a dinner with a coach, I don't worry about it,
Yeah.
But also I think it's prevalent that that's not the same for all women who are maybe just starting their careers as a coach and getting their feet wet, and they're 24. And when you're the player's age or you're younger, like it gets a little tricky. So I definitely felt at times extremely lonely, and like I couldn't have a normal life. I still feel that way at times. I'm dating someone who's in the industry, and it's a complete secret, and it's like, I want to share that to let people know that it is personal life gets very tricky in this situation. So there's still some times where I feel lonely, or like I have no one to go to. But at the same time, you asked about work-life balance. Like, I don't have a work-life balance right now,
Which was my next question. That was
No.
exactly what I was going to ask you. And I feel like, the
No.
older you get in life, you'll find that, but it's like when you're trying to rise up the ranks. And so it's important to have balance. And I was wondering if you had any.
I do, but I just think I take it in perspective of in season, I don't have a work-life balance, but I would say like I've already got 6 weeks of travel all over the world planned for December. So I just think of it as like normal people take weekends and have a drink every night or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm black and white, I don't have really anything going on in the season. And then in the off season, I'll allow myself time to just completely fall off the map, and the less self-service, the better type of thing after winter meetings, basically. So I just believe in like putting that all together. And then, in season, I don't really want a lot of distractions or things. And my family, my friends know that. And it's just an accepted part of the industry and the business. And I would say I do have a work-life balance. I just probably balance it out a lot different than most.
It's rollover days.
Very seasonal work-life balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rollover days. They just roll over and eventually you use them all in one big chunk, which is great.
Yes,
That could be awesome too, because you could really disappear for a while. Okay.
Yes.
We don't have time to go through the entire like resume and all of there's degrees, there's different countries. So I'm going to put the ball in your court to an extent, just to start with. Most impactful job or experience, and if you want to bring up, there's no rules here, if you want to bring up multiple too, but I mean there's so much on here that I was going through in terms of your background, both school wise, but then also job wise, really getting like an amazingly eclectic mix. And you mentioned some of it, like for example, being in the DR, but I mentioned, working with the Dutch national team, and then also getting degrees like in kinesiology and exercise science. I know there's strength and conditioning there. So I'll let you take it where you want to go, because you can speak to it much better than me. I feel like I'm not able to talk at the college level like that anymore, but you've got degrees on top of degrees compared to someone like me.
I can't even pronounce where you went to school in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Like, can't do it.
Yeah. I think I'll go kind of two things just on different ends of the spectrum, where I think definitely one of the most impactful things that I did was be a graduate assistant strength and conditioning coach at LSU for 2 years. And what is lost in professional baseball at the minor league level is the need to win. Right. So it's great to win, but at the same time, our organization, like I'm not being evaluated on whether or not we win the championship for the Florida State League. I'm being evaluated on whether I'm able to develop our players that are in the minor league system to get them ready for the next level. And that's sometimes those go hand in hand and sometimes they don't. Sometimes, we have a very young, raw team and, we're fighting for a playoff spot, but we may not even make it. And that's not something that we want. But at the same time, it's more important to let players get reps and experiences than it is to play the best team to win the game. So all that to say, winning is kind of like lost, at the minor league level. And so that pressure to win doesn't really present itself in the professional ranks until you get to the major league level. And so for me to start my career at the college level, and especially at LSU, where go Tigers, where the expectation is to win for all sports, so if you're not winning in women's tennis, your ass is on the line as a coach. So as a strength coach, I got to experience 6 different teams, and baseball and softball were 2 of those. And it was just so cutthroat, so everything mattered, and to have that level of pressure and expectation to win was phenomenal for me as a young coach, to see just how winners act and think, and just present themselves as coaches. Definitely fit my personality, and that's just who I am as a person anyway. I'm very competitive. I want to win. But also to have that from the coaching side of things for 2 years at LSU was extremely vital before I got into professional baseball and to minor league baseball specifically, where that's not as prevalent. So from a cultural standpoint, from a winning standpoint, that was really important for me. And then from just the more like technical side of things, was definitely, I would say, with the Astros, where they were really at the front of some things, and everyone can make the jokes about, they were at the front of banging on a trash can. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. Okay. But they, all kidding aside, it's like, look, they're still kicking everyone's ass and they're getting booed in every stadium and they're still doing it, and so it's like, okay, maybe that was unscrupulous, but also like they did something right for like 5 years, that they continue to just pump out prospects or pump out major league players from their minor league system. And that's a result of the foundations of what they did 5 to 6 years ago, when they were at the front of TrackMan, they were at the front of Blast Motion, they were at the front of using Edgertronic cameras when nobody knew what those were. And so they just got such a head start on player development when a lot of teams were not investing in that. So thankfully I was there 16 to 18 and just got to really witness that transition. And take a perspective of using objective information to both evaluate and also to develop players. So that's actually where I got the job. That's where it kind of came from, where one of my mentors, Dylan Lawson, who's now the current major league hitting coach for the Yankees, he was a minor league hitting coach with the Astros. He kind of took me under his wing, taught me about some hitting stuff, and was like, you're more than just a strength coach, like you can play different roles. He encouraged me to dive into what I did in Amsterdam, which was eye tracking for hitters, to understand how the eyes and the brain interact to basically allow a hitter to see a pitch. If you're ever wondering how a hitter hits a 98 mile per hour two seam, like, there's a lot more than just a swing there. So he was definitely a huge mentor of mine, and actually ended up hiring me with the Yankees in 2019. So I would say the Astros organization and just some key mentors that I had there were wildly impactful from like a more technical side of things with coaching, and specifically with the baseball side of things is not so much the strength and conditioning side of things.
It's incredible the amount of stuff you've already done, and you're just 35 years old. I say that with the utmost respect. We got a couple of powerhouses in here. We got the SEC with LSU. We got the ACC with you and Scott. So that's interesting between the football and the baseball there with you two. I went to the University of Colorado, which is a beautiful campus. We'll leave it at that. All right. I want to know if you two, who could bench more, because I swear to you, when you got on here, Rachel, I was like, she is freaking ripped. And I knew that obviously strength and conditioning, you're a very athletic person. You're very, but I was like, mercy. But I don't know if you know about this. Scott Braun, he tries to hide it sometimes, but if you go on his Instagram, little Scotty B is pretty ripped too. So at some point, maybe after winter meetings, when you're on your 6-week vacation, we could set up some sort of like obstacle course or bench press between the two of you. I'd be interested to see who would actually win that.
And I've gone down. I can add to this too, Rachel. I've definitely gone downhill since I am past my prime in my mid 30s, because I used to do, it was like 5x5s with reps. You would max out. I haven't maxed out in many years at this point. I've gone down significantly weight, up in reps. A lot of that actually has to do with working at MLB Network and being around certain producers. There's one in particular who stands out, he's not there anymore, but he had so many issues with his body, and he was a big weightlifter, and he just scared the crap out of me from doing what I'm doing. So I have significantly downgraded. But in my heyday, max bench definitely was at least in the mid 200s to close to upper 200s. And
I bring this up, Rachel, because I know that weight training is so much more prevalent now in baseball. It's not just about, pitching. It's not just about hitting and hand-eye coordination, but the weight training, particularly lower body. I know a lot of pitchers are starting to lift more weight. So how do you balance that with the need to kind of look at each person's body to make sure that they're not only developing in terms of the game, but physically developing the way that they should be?
Yeah, there's definitely many schools of thought in strength and conditioning. I would say, I'm like split down the middle. I have a degree. One of my degrees is very heavy into biomechanics, and I'm definitely a movement nerd and understand how important that is and how important that is for a person's health. I also understand how important velocity is in pitching. And I understand how important exit velocity is in hitting. In fact, it's, in my opinion, one of the most important things. And so if you're stronger, likely you're going to be able to hit the ball harder. That's not always the case in pitching. I think that there's definitely a separation. If I had to tell a hitter about strength and conditioning, I would be like, put on 30 pounds now. And definitely like, even when you consider someone getting too bulky, I don't think that's as much of a concern, I'll say, with position players as it is with pitchers. There's definitely a high movement, like the movement component of pitching is so much different than position players. I mean, you definitely see, like, we've got a player on our team right now who's definitely skin and bones, and he throws 95. So, it's like, can you really say that gaining more weight and getting stronger is going to help you with velocity and pitching? There's a lot more involved with mechanics and movement in that area. So I kind of just gave you a roundabout answer, but I think both are important. However, I would say leaning 60-40 on the side of get strong, especially for young people. It's different when you are an older player, a veteran player, but like for young people coming up, it's like, dude, put on 20 pounds, and at least that's going to help you in that stage of your development. And I still think at this age, 20 to 25, where players are still really physically developing, it's hugely important.
And the weightlifting is different too. I mean, I remember, for example, I broadcast in the Cape Cod Baseball League for a couple of seasons, and I'd go to the gym every day with a bunch of players, but I would work out on my own because I'm doing like I was done. I played in high school, not even baseball, mostly basketball, but I was like, I'm just working out to stay in shape and all of that. These guys are very specific with their routines. And like you said, I think they were mostly in the train of thought. The pitchers were definitely different, but the position players were trying to bulk up, but they still weren't doing the exact same. It wasn't like the the beach bod kind of workout going on. So the difference, and I bring this up because, and people can probably dive into this as much as they want, like on Google, but there have been like football strength coaches that have been hired in the baseball world. And sometimes there's a lot of debate over, hey, like baseball is a different type of lift and you could get hurt. So is that true in your mind, or is it all kind of similar? I mean, obviously you're not just ripping, bench press and bicep curls and stuff, but you're saying that stuff can be super helpful too.
Oh man, this is a whole.
I know it's a deep dive. I didn't know we were going here, but I was
running the world. Here's the thing you have to think about is again, I'm going to try to keep this very short, although it's very difficult for me. I'm very passionate about it. And I left strength and conditioning for a reason in professional baseball. But if you just think about it like this, like if for some reason football fell off the face of the earth and we got all of the football athletes that you see, those ginormous bodies who are just like almost murdering people, some reason they didn't have football to go to, right? And let's just say basketball fell off the face of the earth and we got all of these 6'7", 7-foot dudes playing baseball. What you would have is all baseball would look like Stanton and Judge.
So that's the model. That's what you want to look like, basically.
Well, I mean, just look at them and look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
So when you make an argument of, well, baseball players don't need to lift that heavy and they don't need to weigh that much and they don't need to be that strong, then it's more about movement. I'm going to call bullshit on that. Like, just look at the most successful player. Look at Mike Trout. Look at the most successful players in the game.
Tristan McKenzie of the Guardians. I just want Tristan McKenzie to eat a hamburger. I'm like, I weigh more than that kid. I know I do. I must.
Look at Ohtani, look at Trout, look at Stanton, look at Judge. So look at the largest athletes in our sport. It doesn't mean that smaller athletes can't be successful. But if we, for some reason, football fell off the face of the earth and the NBA fell off the face of the earth, AKA the Dominican Republic is what I just said. Those sports don't exist. So they get all of the first-class athletes in the Dominican Republic play baseball. Mm-hmm. The first-class athletes, people are going to get upset by me saying this, most of the first-class athletes, the biggest, strongest athletes, self-select into football and basketball in the United States of America.
Julio Rodriguez is 6'4", 6'5". He's fast as anybody, and he's still growing into his body.
Well,
he's probably going to get even bigger.
O'Neal Cruz, if he puts on some weight, oh mercy.
Yeah, that's a great call. I love all that. That makes sense. I have two more things before we go. One is just going back to, this is a different kind of strength, but the futures game. It's the first time I spoke to Rachel. We were on the air, but I'm sure you remember what was it? The first inning, Rachel is smoked by a foul ball as a base coach. And and we have her mic'd up. So the whole experience runs through and it's just perfect. Like the moment, the background in strength and conditioning, just being like, whatever, took it like nothing and was just like, let's go, let's keep going. I mean, I've seen some base coaches get smoked and they're down for a while.
I mean, did you really think I was going to collapse on live television?
No,
you're
not allowed to.
Then it's like, oh yeah, like this is why you can't have women in baseball.
Exactly.
Like, come on,
you're not allowed to.
You just can't. Also, it's just like my mistake. I was way too close. I just had to wear it. What are you going to do?
It was amazing. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out there because I wanted everyone to know the toughness factor there too. Like on
I don't think
national
anybody
TV,
questions her toughness at this point.
No. But if you want to look back for some quick visual evidence of like in game, like what the heck, I felt the pain and I had to keep broadcasting. So, lastly, in terms of just getting back to career and everything you're doing so far, just simply put for me, goals. What goals are there for you? You've been in the game now for a while. You've done so many different things. Is it as simple as I want to be a big league manager? Is there more?
I want to be a general manager. So I think that I'll be in coaching for, I don't know. I'm not going to put a timeline on it. I really just don't know. I think when I became a hitting coach, I was like, 1 to 2 years. And now this is like year 4 or whatever after I said that. So I think that general manager is like the North Star, and I don't know where that's going to take me or when. Could be 10 to 15 years from now, and that's fine. I'm not really worried about it. I'm worried about being able to win for a very long period of time when I get to that role. I'm not worried about getting there fast, and so all of these experiences, I just keep collecting tools. keep collecting a deeper understanding of the game, and more importantly, I think a deeper understanding of player development and what it would take to create the machine, that pumps out players at a lower cost is really what that means, is using your player development system to develop players and not buy them, which I laugh. I say that tongue in cheek because I'm in the Yankees organization.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But I give credit to the Yankees for so long having that, having that philosophy, and now we're changing, and I don't know if that means that you're going to see more of our player development system be in the big leagues, but more so like using our player development system to develop players so that even in trade situations, we can get more out of our player development system. So even with the Yankees, who are known for purchasing players instead of developing them, we are doing a lot more intensive development, to the credit of Kevin Reese and Cashman and Hal for setting that up, if for nothing else, to make sure that we can get the most out of our trades.
Yeah.
So really using player development as a tool to create a successful organization as a whole is what I'm passionate about learning about. And so hopefully all these experiences that I'm gaining, strength coach, hitting coach, now manager, will make me a better general manager in the future.
So GM over manager, though, if you had one, I mean, obviously I'm sure you'd 100%. Love to experience both, but GM, the manager's
not in charge.
Yeah.
I want to be like the head coach of a baseball organization is the general manager. It's not the manager. And I don't think any major league manager would be offended by me saying that. I think that those positions are critical for leadership of clubhouse, et cetera, like 100% critical. It's really important that you have the right leader over the major league team, but they're not calling the shots, from a macro level perspective. And so I want to be calling the shots, like I want to create systemic change over the course of over the spectrum of the entire organization. And a major league manager doesn't do that. So a major league manager is still left at the mercy of whatever the organization wants to do to develop players, to get players, et cetera. And then they're just handed the team. And like, it's critical that you have an incredible leader in that role. However, they're not picking the players. They're not deciding how those players are developed or grown in the system. And so a player might come up from AAA or AA, and it's like, what were you doing? And now we have you here. Or like, wow, phenomenal. But like making those decisions that affect the entire organization, and frankly creates some systemic change in the game of professional baseball, the business of professional baseball, I should say. That happens at a much higher level than major league manager. So ultimately, I want to be calling the shots. I want to be the head coach of an organization. And that right now is the general manager position. It's not the major league manager position.
Yeah. Just ask Joe Girardi, Joe Madden, and Chris Woodward. All right. Last question from me, if you don't mind, Rachel. I probably should have asked this at the beginning. We're kind of going backwards a little bit, but born in Omaha, Nebraska, not a place that has Major League Baseball. I was born in Colorado. We didn't have Major League Baseball until 1993. Where did the love of the game come from?
So when I was, the game to me is like softball and baseball. I know that baseball people probably don't think this, but softball and baseball are more or less the same. Like I've loved being at a field in a dugout for a long time. It was definitely a love of mine. Playing softball growing up, and obviously going on and playing in college was the dream. And, because there is no dream beyond college really still, not so much for professional softball players. So anyway, that love has been since I was young. But like you mentioned, I really did not grow up a baseball fan, because in Omaha, the baseball, fanatics were College World Series fans, right. Which just means you go to the College World Series and experience that. So anyway, I really didn't, professional baseball did not come on my radar until I was at LSU, and actually was just seeing a lot of the LSU players, and just like my friends from college were going on and playing and then coming back in the off season and, regaling us with stories of like hot dogs after the game and lifting at the local YMCA and the minor league system and the Latin players and all this stuff. And I was like, just the casual person does not understand the layers of minor league baseball. Even being a college athlete and college softball player, I didn't understand, the connection between Latin America and American players and how they just intersect in low A and all of the different factors that go into that. So I think that the interest in, again, the business of professional baseball really came when I understood the minor league system. And that's really what my passion still lies in, is understanding the entire organization. And I'm not just a fan of a major league baseball team. And I think that's also why I'm not really, being on a major league staff is not a a box that I need to check, although it might be a step in my career. I'm not, about the glitz and the glam. It's the entire organization that I'm fascinated by and really want to, sink my teeth into.
You've got it all going. I mean, this is like everything coming together for you and what you're doing right now. Just basically, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, such a pleasure. Obviously, I had like a very brief interview last time for the Futures Games. This was really cool to dive into everything that you've done so far. Awesome interview. And also current GMs have to do that all the time. So you'll be very well prepared. I mean, she answered questions with the best of them. Yeah. And I hope we don't edit out a couple cuss words because I'm all about that too. And it's a podcast. So authenticity is also key these days. I'm all about it. So cheers to everything you're doing for the Yankees, for young players, and of course for women in sports. Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, Rachel. Best of luck the rest of the way.